there will spring up all these companies that are trying to have some verification that says a human actually sent you this email, a human actually sent you this text message, a human actually took this picture. That's one thing I'm very confident in.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Dougals, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
Skippy and Dougals talk investing. Welcome back, everybody. This week, listener mail only. We're capturing a couple pieces, plus some news that's associated with that this week for listener mail. The first up is a blog post about SaaS. The SaaSpocalypse is upon us. This one says SaaS is not dead. But certain types of SaaS are. The second one is this piece that's been going around all around town. Just imagine, it's January 2028 and the global intelligence crisis is upon us. Once again, because AI has taken over the world. The third blocks layoffs this week. First order thinking. This is the manifestation of all the things that we just discussed in the first two topics. But no, my friend. I think it's not quite that simple. So let's talk about that one. All right, so those are the three items. Thank you, listeners, for sending in listener mail. If you want to do that, questions, comments, pieces, skippydougals@gmail.com. Appreciate it.
Well, isn't there more listener mail? Are we going to talk about how to book cheap flights, or is that just, did that not make the cut?
We got so much listener mail. I don't know. We'll see what comes up. But the core, I just covered the spine.
Yeah, you're going to have to walk us through this. I was very interested in the SaaSpocalypse like 2 weeks ago, and then I just got worn out. So I'm having a hard time. I mean, I've read all the points, I think. And now the investing piece for me is just, does this business make money and is it cheap? And then if I get to that point, I don't think I'm going to try and predict the future, right? The problem with the software names that we're going to talk about a lot and these two pieces is a lot of them started at crazy valuations. I think that's what's happening now. I think the human psyche is such that if a stock goes down 60%, you assume it's a deal. And amazingly, some of these names have gone down 60% and they're still not a deal. And that's a whole other problem. Anyway, go ahead.
Curmudgeon pants. Obviously, yes, you're always trying to buy low, sell high. That's not what this is about. That's not even what this is about. I'm going to read the first paragraph of this piece, and then we'll go into a few of the key points. Here's the first paragraph. First, Katie needed to pull data from her CRM. Normally, that's 5+ minutes of clicking around. Instead, she asked Claude, and Claude just figured it out. It connected to the CRM, navigated the data intelligently across many tables and fields, and returned exactly what she wanted. Then it wrote a skill to do it faster the next time. She didn't open the CRM once. So the core thesis of this whole thing is software ain't going away. No, my friend. But the difference is now software is being rebuilt for agents, not humans. And if you don't take that in mind, you're going to miss, from an investing standpoint, the next wave of software that's coming out. Or from a usage standpoint, from a business standpoint, you fitting to go away. Not tomorrow, but eventually. That's kind of the core thesis of the whole thing.
We've talked about the core thesis a lot. I agree that software is a tool here. And in most cases, you're going to take advantage of the tool. We've talked about how amazing Claude is at certain things. I asked it for some help this week, and it completely got lost and tried to it tried to build something independent of the tool, and it wasted like a bunch of credits and 45 minutes of my life. In which case, I just went back to the tool and hit like 4 buttons and it was done. So to me, that's a great example of when thousands of people have spent thousands of hours already building something, typically that has the functionality you need built in. And reinventing the wheel sometimes is a poor approach.
Great. I already see how this episode's going to go, and I love every part about it. Okay. I'm going to go through some of the other core points, and then, it's great. Okay. The structural shift that they're naming here is that end users are humans and agents, not just humans, where a lot of software was built for humans. Agents don't want a user interface. They want APIs. They want the context. right? Access. AI has collapsed the cost of building software, and traditional SaaS bundles are getting unbundled. So that's the key points. From that, really the heart of the piece is who wins are systems where data originates inside the system. So what that means is when you have to go out of your workflow in order for you to create the data and then use the data, that is then going to go away because you have all this AI that can then get the data and use the data all in the same place. You don't have to go outside of it.
Well, and if the real value comes from AI manipulating that data, guess who's going to put a gate around that data and charge people for AI to access it? The system of record, which means they have pricing power in their business where other people might not.
Yeah. Yep. Next, governance-heavy workflows are going to win. ERP, compliance, contract management. Okay, makes sense. Third, agent-friendly architecture. So this goes back to you need APIs, right? MCP, which is the core of AI. And then the last is passive context capture tools. So this is like Gong, which is it's a sales tool. So Gong records your calls, it then uses AI to go through those calls, summarize, look at sentiment, next steps, all that kind of stuff. Who's at risk? The CRM. This goes back to, it's the opposite of the system, the data origination argument, because in the CRM, data originates outside the system. What that means is I'm a salesperson. I have the sales call. Then I come back to my CRM and I input that data myself. Here's how the call went. Here are my notes, et cetera. The data actually happens on the call, not the repository.
Mm-hmm.
The second is human efficiency workflow tools, meaning if you design your tool just for humans alone to get more efficient, that's not going to work because now, again, it's humans and agents. The third is integration platforms. So that's if it's just a to B connection. You're not looking at unstructured data. You're not pulling data in from a bunch of different places. It's just I connect directly to you. And the last, this gets to your pricing pressure point, but in a different way, walled gardens that restrict AI access are going to lose. That's what they're saying.
The data originates point is so nuanced, and saying that the AI note taker is where the data originates is interesting, because I would argue you could ask why or how 5 more times and be like, well, actually the data originates with your potential customer who's a human, or in some cases your potential customer who's an agent. I was surprised they took that tact with where the data truly originates. And then I would argue that, sure, I'm going to say the data originates in the human of my potential seller, in the human brain of my potential seller. What's challenging is to get that data, to find that individual, get that data out of their brain, and then I still argue that you have to store it somewhere. So I don't know that I believe that a AI optimized CRM is truly as at risk as they're portraying it to be here.
I think that's an interesting take. One of the questions probably ends up being, what is it? You have to define AI optimized. And
that's kind of what I'm saying is, so if Gong or Granola or your AI note taker of choice hops on the call with you or reads your emails, we really want them to build their own Salesforce CRM to store that, because according to this, that's where the data originates. I just don't know if I buy that argument completely.
There's one thing, this gets a little bit off of that point, but one thing that I think is interesting about maybe movements in general or inflection points in general with technology is how, this time is different, how everything is painted to be like, this is the next big thing. And it doesn't mean that something's not that important. But in reading this, I like the clarity and the structure that they brought to the piece. I really like it. I think it's easy to read, easy to understand, whether agreement or disagreement. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that it really raised to me with regard to the idea of this being so different is that we've been moving to more and more abstraction between humans and how things work over time. Even if you go back to something simple, like when...
By abstraction, do you mean complexity?
No, I mean, we stop understanding how anything that we're using works. That's basically like we are removed. Early 2000s is when Squarespace came out, right? Like that. This is it's a very easy to understand example. If you go before that point, and there's probably other software that it was like this too. But if you go before that point, if you wanted a website, you had to build a website.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where there's something that makes it easy to do that. Then it gets easier and easier. And to the point where you go, I assume that websites just kind of pop up. Like I have no idea how to, use a website. And the movement that's being portrayed in a few of like the pieces and et cetera that are coming out. And this gets to the agent and humans point. One, as you've stated before, it's all software. All of this is software. So the idea of like what software is, I think is an interesting point, but it's all software. And computers talking to computers has been happening for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's another example of computers talking to computers, which isn't in the abstract that different than what has happened before. But a big difference is that non-technical people are now able to do more things that technical people could only do before because agents are handling the complexity. So we get abstracted to your complexity statement. We get abstracted away from the complexity. We don't understand what's happening beneath the scenes. That is something that's interesting. And if you look at the investment thesis, that's not how they frame it exactly, but the investment thesis that comes from this, they're saying that if you are forcing humans to do things, in the future, humans won't have to do those things. And if you make humans do stuff, you lose.
What's your guess on what percentage of people have used an AI agent in America? Because I think it's less than 5%.
Yeah, I was going to say at max, probably 5%.
So, I mean, we talk about Meta's user base being 3 billion at time, and that's great. Yeah. But what we often forget is there's still like 1 billion people that don't even know what the internet is.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a part of the point, is that maybe it never goes above 5% of people that knowingly are using AI agents. Knowingly is the important thing. But at some point, everyone's actually using them. You just don't realize it. Just like everyone's AI has been involved in everything for a long time. We just didn't know it.
Yeah, our parents are knowingly interacting with AI on Facebook currently.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
They just think that's fair. I think the whole thing is overblown, and we're in the peak of overreaction, basically. The trough of delusionment here is going to be so much fun.
The peak of overreaction always happens when everyone doesn't understand what they're talking about. Because there's so much uncertainty that you can just make stuff up.
There's another thing we haven't talked about. Actually, one of the things I find most interesting right now is we might get to the point where what we're calling an AI agent, but some computing thing, can pretty much do 90% of your average desk worker's job. We might get to that point very soon. The thing that is often not talked about is what the cost of that compute will be. Because right now, I believe that cost of the compute for most jobs is more than the cost of a human that does that job. That's a fascinating thing. And then I have no clue. You talk about predictions I don't want to make. I have no clue where that cost goes. Because right now, I feel like that cost is wholly subsidized, and we're like the early Uber days where people would get in the Uber, pay their 25 cents, and laugh to ride 3 blocks and laugh because it was all subsidized by the VC money, right? I don't think any of these AI companies are charging their true compute costs. I think they're charging the subsidized compute costs. So even if it seems very expensive today, that might be 1/10 to 1/100th of what it actually costs. This is a whole other thing, even if you assume the AI is perfect. It's like, what makes more sense for this job case? What's cheaper? In a lot of cases, the computer's going to be better from a reliability standpoint.
Yeah, you also have to think about if you just look at what's cheaper for the unit cost of the human versus the compute, that's different than what's cheaper for the outcome. Like those are two different things. And so if the AI, one, you're right, absolutely, it's subsidized. So from a business or end user perspective, you've talked about this with OpenAI or Claude and the cost of tokens. From the end user perspective right now, it's much cheaper to use AI to do a thing versus a human because, to your point, we don't actually see the cost. The business is seeing the cost. And can the treadmill end up going fast enough such that I don't run out of breath and fall on the thing before they figure out how to make the machine just run on its own forever? We'll see. The other thing, I like that point that you brought up. The other thing that I think is where so much uncertainty, there's a lot of uncertainty, but so much uncertainty lies, which is where some of the doom gloom, and we haven't even gotten to the doom gloom yet, comes from, is that the question that people are not able to answer, I'm not able to answer it, I'm not about to answer for you, just a spoiler alert.
I got you. Just tell me what it is.
I
got it. Yeah.
What are the humans going to do? And because we don't have an answer to that, the answer ends up being nothing. Like humans will do nothing. Not exactly. No, it's not exactly what
the
people
humans
say.
will do human things. This is not.
No, but I'm saying, but what is that? Like literally, tactically. Because I think both of us are going to say that AI is going to end up doing a lot of the tasks that humans do today. And then what people say is, so ipso facto, humans won't be doing anything. No, humans will be doing different things, but there's not an answer for what the humans will be doing. And so therefore we just stop at nothing. And when you don't have it, you don't agree with that?
I do, but it's not quite that black and white. Humans will be doing human things. Some humans will be protesting the horrible thing that is AI. Some humans will be pledging to never use any technology. Some humans will be buying guns to shoot down drones. It's all fairly predictable. What we talked about last week is where I think this goes, which is the value flows to what's scarce. AI makes what's scarce drastically different. We just have to ride that wave. But the humans and their capital will flow to the things that are scarce. I personally think, this is maybe a lame take. I think in-person events and maybe even like local bars and restaurants might have their spot in the sun because people will crave the things that are scarce, and it might be really scarce. When you can run a company that used to need 10 people and when you can run it with 2, yep. You know what you crave? Some interaction with those 10 people you used to see every day, and you're going to have to find a place for that somewhere.
All right. That's absolutely right. However, humans are going to do human things is like not helpful. That's not like it's completely unhelpful. The point that I don't have the answer. The point that I'm trying to make is this: if the statement, which I do think is true in the near term, in the first level, the statement that you have to build software that other software is going to use, not just humans, I'd say yes, that's true. However, this is why I state the fact that the craziness comes because of what a human is going to do. In the end, a human has to use it, whatever it is. And so if we say the UI has to be built for an agent, I'd go, actually, I think the UI is just going to be different. A human is going to use the UI, but the UI might be glasses. The UI might just be auditory listening in any place that we are so that you can just fulfill my needs. It might be a different UI, but the UI has to be built for humans.
There will be software. I'm confident in this prediction.
Of course.
That says there's no agents allowed. There will be experiences where they are AI free. There will be social media imaging that says guaranteed human. You already hear this on like your local radio station. It says guaranteed human. There's going to be this backlash. I'm confident in this, that some things are going to try and take the high road and say, we guarantee that all our users, this is so funny. We talked about clear, secure, and verifying identities and stuff. Mm-hmm. I think a company like that, and not necessarily clear, but there will spring up all these companies that are trying to validate what happens online and trying to have some verification that says a human actually sent you this email, a human actually sent you this text message, a human actually took this picture. That's one thing I'm very confident in, and I think there will be a significant backlash there. So I don't think all software gets made for other pieces of software to talk to it. I think some people take the entirely different road and say, this is human only.
Okay. Are you familiar with Ned Ludd?
No. What joke is coming for me now?
You know me too well. Ned Ludd, 300 years ago, whenever it was, destroyed the looms. When they started coming out with like automatic ways to spin the wool, the spinners were not going to have jobs anymore. So Ned Ludd destroyed the looms. Mm-hmm. There's a term that came from this. It's called a Luddite. I think the spirit of what you're saying, I agree with. I do not agree with the outcome. What I would say is, let's just take the UI, just to use that as one example. I think that building UI for agents Sure. That's like building the next version of APIs. I'm just going to say that.
It might,
But I
might
think
just be APIs. And I'm not sure that it has to be anything more complex than that.
But it will be more complex because then people have to, like, you have to sell it as more complex because otherwise you can't get a premium. So, but anyway, but I think the next version of the ultimate winner in the in the UI space is when you build the next version of the UI that a human will use. Because in the end, humans have to use the thing. I do not believe what you stated around there being completely, obviously there will be AI-free zones. I do not think those will win. But in advertising, maybe they will. But if I go into that coffee shop, the coffee shop is going to have AI in their payroll or something. Like, it's not going to be an AI-free world that exists in there.
What I'm saying about AI-free zones is not the right term, but we both know what we're talking about. If humans still make the majority of purchasing decisions, and I'm not sure if that will be the case or not, but I think in the near term that's more likely than not, then the AI-free zones would be the most valuable spaces on the internet. And they would be like, people still have to advertise on TV, but no one really watches TV anymore, or at least not live. So what has happened to Super Bowl ad prices? They grow at like the most expensive rates on earth because it's one place that you can guarantee that humans that make purchasing decisions will actually show up. That's what I'm predicting.
Okay. I got that. Yeah. I'm going to throw out the last word, then I'm going to move to the next topic. Okay. Just going to summarize what I'm trying to say, because it's not going through the thick skull that you have going on over there. No, I'm joking. And I think it actually is. But I just want to summarize. Where I think with this piece, where I think they are directionally correct is looking at the time frame of the next 12 to 18 months. If you take the time frame of the next 12 to 18 months, I do think that directionally, the organizations that end up getting more traction are going to be the ones that figure out how to leverage AI agents in order to make human work easier. When you get past the next 24 months, that time frame is fairly arbitrary. Let's just call it near term, medium term. When you get past that, we will start to figure out what the human use cases are in the future, and then it'll become the organizations that make those human use cases better. And that use case might be sitting in a coffee shop. And how do you build the best coffee shop? But in the end, the human will win. That is what I'm trying to say. Last word.
No, you do this to me. You show up and you just try and make me mad all episode. That's so oversimplified. What we're doing right now, effectively, I've got to use an email because hopefully I don't know if it simplifies it or not. Yeah. But it's like I want to say to Dougals, hey, let's grab a beer. But I'm like afraid to say that. So I go to my AI agent and I say, please invite Dougals to a beer. And it writes like this 5-paragraph sentence. You're over there scrolling X or something. You don't care at all about this long email that got sent your way. You have your AI agent tell you what it means. It finally says, Skippy wants to get a beer. And we just spent like $20 to have that conversation when I could have sent you a text message that says, let's get a beer. That's what, when you talk about all the agents talking to each other and streamlining the software for everything, it's like we're just overcomplicating the simple request. There's like one simple request that wants to happen from a human.
That's today. That's today. What I'm trying to say is that I'll just keep on your beer. We should probably do that, by the way. When was the last time we got a beer? Anyway, what I'm trying to say is if you fast forward in the future, I'm going to be having a conversation with another friend. Something triggers in that conversation that it would be great for me to grab a beer with Skippy. I come back home, or on my way back home, I get prompted. It says, based on what you said over there, you should probably grab a beer with Skippy. Boom. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying. So the UI, if you say UI, I'm not talking about the UI of a specific piece of software. I'm talking about the UI of like life. If you fast forward to the future, I think that these agents are going to be talking to each other. Great. Companies have to do that. Awesome. Whatever. But it's the companies that make whatever you want to do as a human easier that are ultimately going to win.
I mean, I'm just saying what's the cost and what's the sacrifice. Because in your example, you let an AI tool listen to your conversation and then prompt you, and it costs you $50 a month.
Dude, you really think I'm no. I still have AOL. I'm not letting anybody do anything. I am Ned Ludd, let alone one of his followers. All right, let's go to the next topic.
Let's go to this other piece.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, because this one is even more hateful from you. Okay, so this one, the 2028 global intelligence crisis. What they did for this is they said, imagine it 2 years in the future. So you're in January 2028. And at that point, you're looking back over the last couple years of what happened. Here's one scenario. They don't paint this as a prediction. They paint it as like a scenario of what we can see given where we are today. What they predict is, one, the stock market peaks in October 2026. Listen now, people, put the date on your cows. And then it starts to go down. And the reason that happens is because there's a huge boom that comes from AI. Labor is displaced. Demand destruction occurs. Why? Because people are out of jobs. So you actually can't buy things. And if all of this happens, there's 10% unemployment, stock market's down 40%, ouchie ouchies. This is quite doom and gloom. We don't have to stick too long on this piece. But I'm going to go to the third point, and we can come back to this piece as we want, because I think that they're tied. The reason I bring up the Block layoff, and if people haven't seen this week, Block, which is Square, if you all remember Square, now called Block as of a few years ago, Block laid off 40% of its employees and said, this is because of AI. This is where business is doing well. It's not because financials are hurting. It's because we do not need the employees right now. Sorry, sucks. And instead of doing this over the course of the next couple of years where we have tiny little layoffs one after the other, which hurts morale, we're going to do it all at once. These two things happening within a 2-week period is what makes it worth discussing to me. You have the big blog that comes out that starts going around that says, there's going to be 10% unemployment. All these companies, because of AI productivity, are going to lay people off. And then Block goes, boop, boop, just happened.
All right. This piece, the 2028 global intelligence piece that people claimed caused software stocks to go down 7% and stuff. There's two things. It's been taken down like 25 times. Read all that. It's really good. Yeah. There's two things that just fire me up. I swear I'm going to get to your piece. But one, they say DoorDash is horrible. And it's like this. Either the restaurant or the purchaser will just vibe code an app that does everything DoorDash does.
It's dumb.
It's dumb. So, and then they go on to say Visa and MasterCard won't exist because the agent will build their own stable coin or leverage a current one to handle transactions, because the agents talking to each other will immediately realize that the merchant processing fee is outrageous and blah, blah, blah. These takes are so dumb that I don't know if you've ever booked right? I book on Airbnb all the time. I book stuff. And every time when you leave, the host sends you a thing that says, next time book direct and save tons of money. And I go, I am never, ever doing that, because when you rob me, when you take my deposit and don't give it back, or when the place is trashed, I have no agency to get my money back with you. The value of Airbnb is the insurance. The value of MasterCard and Visa is the insurance. The value of DoorDash is that if the experience sucks, they give me my money back. They punish the restaurant. They do, like, that is the entire value. Yep. I'm buying insurance here.
I'm going to use a different word. It means the same thing.
Yeah.
Trust wins. Trust wins.
The business models for MasterCard and Visa are about trust.
Yes.
And I don't care about the 2.5 merchant fee. In most cases, they pay me 3% to spend the money, so I actually come out better.
I have zero doubt, absolutely zero doubt, that if you go 10 years in the future, probably not even that long, but I'm just going to give 10 years in the future, there are going to be multiple companies that are worth billions and billions and billions of dollars that were vibe coded to start. No doubt.
Sure,
about that. And I also have no doubt that if I vibe coded up DoorDash to use basically what you were just saying, and then called you and said, order through me instead, Skippy, someone that actually trusts me, you'd still go, no.
Like, no chance.
It just doesn't make much sense. And even if I vibe coded it myself, I would not use it.
Well, and if you vibe coded it and it became a viable business, one of the first things you do is hire some software engineers to
from DoorDash
actually to make sure that you can add new features that your customers request, that the code is stable, that you have to provide that trust and insurance. That's what businesses do. And if it's this black box that occasionally breaks and you have no clue about the 100,000 lines of code that are in there, you're in trouble. This piece is so overblown. It drives me crazy.
People that were not in the tech industry over 20 years ago. You probably know this, but you did not experience it live. How when you wanted to set up like your business, your website, etc., you had to have servers. Like you had to go and have physical servers that were dedicated to you, whether they were on premise or not, depending on level of security. Like if you wanted real security, you would have servers in your building. Mm-hmm. This is where we were 20 years ago. Cloud computing then came out, made it so much easier to get businesses started. Everything that Skippy just said still had to happen. You still had to have engineers that came on. You still had to have lawyers. You still had to have accountants. It did not change that. To go back to, this is why I think all of these things are connected. To go back to the first piece that we talked about, what those people did was different. It's always been evolving what people do. Job titles evolve and change. What the humans do changes. The fact that the thing has to get done doesn't change nearly as quickly. Sometimes things might become obsolete. But it goes back to, we talked about hidden figures, I think it was last week or the week before.
Yeah.
Right, it's the same thing. There was a human being that was called a computer. That was the job, did the math. A computer was created. Oh, that thing can do the math much quicker. I'm not going to go home and like watch television. No, now the math gets done quicker. So I, as the human, can go do something different. I can use judgment. I can make the astronauts feel more comfortable with the math. Like there are things that I can now do. It just shifts. Anyway, we're all worked up.
Yes. So you want to tie this to Block.
Yeah. I also just want to get your reaction to Block, tied to this or not.
Here's Block's headcount in 2019, about 4,000 people. 2020, 5,500. 2021, 8,500. 2022, 12,500. 2023, 13,000.
Oh, wow.
And today they're at about 10,000, and they're going to 6,000. The reason Block is interesting, one, they were appropriately staffed probably in 2020. They're going back there. they overhired. They have a pretty nice business where they were able to overhire without completely going bankrupt, right? I think this is how software stocks that are down 60% are going to respond. I think this is a template for that. AI plays a role in everything we do right now. So I'm not willing to fully dismiss the AI talking points, but this is not the reason that they laid off 40% of their staff. Yep. The reason they laid off 40% of their staff is they overhired.
Here's a different, I don't know Block well enough, so I'll just use them as an example.
Yeah.
But here's a different take, maybe directionally the same thing that you're saying. There's also a world where 10,000 wasn't the right number, and 6,000 isn't the right number. 7,500 is the right number, making up a number. Those 1,500 people between the 6,000 they're going down to and the 7,500 are just not the same people, or don't have the same capabilities. It may not be that we don't need, or it could, right number maybe is 10,000. And you can still say, but the humans in 3 years are going to be doing different things than those 4,000 people are doing today. So either we have to hire different people, different capabilities, or maybe rehire some of the same people, but for different jobs.
You know what's more interesting than any of your takes is, that came out. I didn't mean it like that. Like rewind 24 months, there's some speculation, I haven't seen this confirmed, that the large majority of the 4,000 people that are let go work from home. And the large majority of the 6,000 people that are staying were in office. That is that's potentially interesting talking point, because this is what everyone kind of speculated might happen. It's like, oh, I see this person's face every day. I can quantify the work that they do. They're getting the mentorship that they need. They're rubbing elbows with higher ups, and they're working across departments. If that rumor is actually true, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. It makes it the hummingbird in the coal mine.
Explain.
Everyone's looking for the canary in the coal mine. The canary in the coal mine is AI. But you actually need to be looking at the hummingbird.
The hummingbird's over here having fun.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And it's if we zoom way out, it goes to a similar premise of some things don't change, same as ever, whatever you want to call it, is if you say trust is central to the software that we use, the products and services that we use. Great. Trust is also essential to the relationships that you have and the value that's perceived inside of an organization. Same thing. That doesn't mean It's when you zoom down that people start to make conclusions that are really hard to say are absolute 100%, because it doesn't mean that in-person is better than remote. It means you have a higher probability of creating that trust if you're in-person or remote. Or it doesn't necessarily mean that there can't be software that's vibe coded and starts to be the new DoorDash. Doesn't mean that, but it means you have a higher probability of getting that trust if you've been around for a while, et cetera, than you do if it's vibe coded by a finance podcast guy.
Yep.
You just there's a higher probability. How do you want to play your odds?
Yep, completely. I like higher probability. And people are trying to say yes or no rather than
yes.
I don't know the future, but the highest probability of success is X.
Exactly.
And right now, the highest probability of success is not vibe coding a DoorDash competitor. It's just not. I think, to try and make me less cranky on this episode, you said same as ever. You didn't mean it as a reference to the Morgan Housel book.
Yep.
I think this would be a really good to read, Same as Ever by Morgan Housel, because the only common theme for the past 6 weeks is the world is ending. This is the grapes of wrath when the tractor is invented and farming will no longer exist, right? I mean, This is the panic in the streets is really something right now. And the future will look more like the past than anyone cares to admit.
Yeah. And especially, it'll look more like the past from a principled perspective, certainly. And so, in the end, this is why we always talk about how predictions are whatever. The only thing you know about the prediction is it's wrong. You don't know exactly how it's wrong, how off it is, any of that. What is great for people generally, in my view, to do, is in anything, is figure out what's your best next step and take that step. So do I know what I as a human should be doing in a year, in 24 months, in 3 years, what my use case is? No, I absolutely don't. What I know is I should probably be using AI on a consistent basis, understanding how it's working. And then, because what that helps me to do is, that's my next best step, right? Start using it. Then that helps me it's not just from the sense of now I understand the tool. I understand Dougall's better. I understand what my unique contribution can be when something is also powered by AI. And I think that's where, as an individual worker or as a business, same kind of thing. Just start using AI in your business. Then you can start to see, okay, here's how, if we take our core competencies that we have as a company and you inject AI into it, here's where we're more unique. You can start to get that understanding. You don't get that understanding if you predict out what things might look in 3 years and just start executing as if that's the truth. You have to experiment your way there, generally, or you can guess right.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I like that. Go ahead.
No, sorry. This is it just came to mind for me. So, soccer game yesterday, goalie from the other team doing awesome stuff, making awesome saves. And then one of the players sitting on the bench, I was coaching this game, one of the players sitting on the bench goes, all he's doing is guessing right and getting lucky. It's like, I think he's anticipating where the ball's going to, but anyway, it just made me think about that.
So the entire conversation today had an outcome which I did not expect. I actually now am debating in my head if the true winners of all the madness happening with AI are the companies that create the most trust, because the in between is less. But if I still know I can count on Visa and count on hotels.com, throw out other names if you want, but then I trust my AI agents to act with those parties who I actually trust. I think value might accrue to the legacy brands that are under attack right now because they have proven to be trustworthy over decades. Mm-hmm. We'll see. All right, wrap us up. I mean, I just got to say, to the listener that sent us the breakdown of how to book cheap flights, I am forever grateful. So sorry, I couldn't wrap without that. We'll put it on the Substack. You can find all things Skippy Dougals, skippydougals.com, and listener mail, skippydougals@gmail.com. If you want premium benefits and you want to support the show, we'd love that support. You can go to skippydougals.supercast.com. You can get our annual portfolio picks. You can get the shows on Sundays instead of Mondays. And you can get premium drops that we do several times a year. That's it. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, everybody.